This might sound hard to believe after what happened last season, but this season, the Miami Hurricanes now have a top 10 offense. Here's how that's going to affect recruiting.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I mean, I'm happy Miami won. Not so happy it's a bye week, although the bye week probably comes at the right time for them. Just selfishly, I want to watch Miami play every weekend. But Hurricanes are 4-0. They're now ranked number 18 in the country. I'm Alex Donno, your host, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're going to talk about Miami's how much they've improved. We're going to talk recruiting with the recruiting overlord in these parts here on the Locked On Network. He's also my colleague at allhurricanes.com. Brian Smith is with us. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing very well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And every time Brian joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And again, those who watched the Hurricanes offense in 2022 should be pretty shocked at how much better they've gotten under Shannon Dawson. And with Tyler Van Dyke having a resurgent season, he, should be considered a guy to watch in the Heisman race right now. Yes, the Miami Hurricanes have a top 10 offense. They are 7th in points per game right now at 43.8. Last year, they finished the season 97th. So from 97th to 7th, they are 8th right now in total yards per game at 519. 21st in passing yards per game at 296.5, and they are 12th in rushing yards per game at 222.5. And the 323 they just put up against Temple, I'm sure helped that number a little bit. So, Brian, I would say it's safe to say that Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson, they're doing their job so far. And Kevin Beard, that entire offensive coaching staff, and I get it, they have played 3 lesser opponents. They did hang up 48 points on Texas A&M, though. It looks like a new era for Miami Hurricanes offensive football.
You talk about the difference a year can make. I mean, you and I had more off-the-air conversations about what was that than I would like to count last year, because it was just like, how do I write a post-game article on this? Oh. I remember having conversations with some of our interns about it too. It's like, make it short gamer, let it ride. I'm not commenting on this, especially after Tyler got hurt.
I think most of those interns realized this was not the right career for them last. It was so bad last year. They're like, I need to find something else to do with my life.
To be honest, it probably had something to. It's hard, whether you want to hear it or not. Our industry and how much money we make is largely due to how well your team is doing. It's just true. Fans, but like Miami fans, will not watch a bad product. They just won't. They have just too many other things to do in South Florida. We suffered for that last year, and we're gaining from it this year because Miami's 4-0. The offense is rolling. It's balanced. It's big play. I wrote about that on All Hurricanes. Name me a team that has not 1, not 2, but 3 receivers that consistently get the ball. Like, it's incredible how many guys they can throw to in a meaningful situation, and it's good. Most teams are lucky to have 2 guys. Miami has 3, and they got some backups. Like I've told this before, Horton would start on a lot of teams. He barely plays.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good football player. Brayshard, he's kind of fast. I think A&M can attest to that. He doesn't get to play a lot. They've got Xavier Restrepo. That kind of offensive firepower, now with a healthy Van Dyke and him not getting hammered on every pass attempt when he throws it, unlike last year, totally different. It's fun to watch because you don't know where the ball's going, no matter what formation, what situation. The play of the year so far for Miami is an offensive play, the throw to Jacoby late in that game against A&M. I mean, yeah. I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was 3rd down and 7, Alex. Like, you could have just ran the ball and punted and all that. Nope, here we go. We're gonna hit a ball down the field. Our guy's better than yours, and he smoked the DB. It's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and when we asked Shannon Dawson about that play call a couple days later, he said, "You get conservative, you get beat," was his quote, which is
true.
Coming from a Miami offensive coordinator, it's That's a money quote. And so, okay, we look at these offensive numbers, and the big thing, especially when we have a guy like Brian Smith on, how is this going to translate into recruiting? Because a lot of the conversations we had early on in the 2024 cycle, right before, because obviously you do a lot of your groundwork in the class of 2024 before you even start playing games in 2023. And I think a lot of offensive recruits were a little bit scared about Miami because the offense was so ineffective last year. Now, the Hurricanes are going to be getting a visit the next time Miami plays, which is October 7th, home against Georgia Tech. They are going to have the top recruit in the class of 2024 visiting, and that's Jeremiah Smith, Chaminade, 5-star wide receiver who's verbally committed right now to Ohio State. Here's what Jeremiah told Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 about Miami's 4-0 start. He said, "I love the way Miami's offense is looking. I love the way Coach Shannon Dawson kept his word. Miami definitely is on another level with that offense. He definitely kept his word. Him, Coach KB, who's Kevin Beard, of course, and Coach Cristobal, they're consistent each and every day. I get a text from either Coach Cristobal, Coach KB, the whole coaching staff. They text me each and every day." So Jeremiah Smith, I remember he and his father saying before the season started, they're definitely going to be watching Miami. They're going to keep tabs on how Miami's offense is looking. So far, so good, Brian.
Well, if it could be Jeremiah or anybody else, if you're not excited about what's been on the field so far for Miami, you've got some blinders on. That's how I would look at it. Jeremiah is a very open-minded kid, know him pretty well. I know that he wouldn't be going to the upcoming Georgia Tech game if he wasn't impressed so far. He would have turned Miami off. Right. He is a business-first guy, very mature for his age. His original commitment to Ohio State face-to-face conversation was based on the longevity of their offense producing NFL receivers, beginning and end of conversation. They've been doing this for a while, and that's why they're the leader. But Miami's showing that now too, so they're in the race. For the longest time, I didn't think Miami had a shot in hell. I didn't, because I didn't think the offense would take this much of a step.
Right.
I mean, it's 4 games in, and it's like a different world. So I'm curious to see what Jeremiah and other guys like Ja'Cory Barney and different guys say that Miami's recruited and have committed elsewhere now that Miami's doing well. Wayne McCoy committed to Florida State. Ny Carr, there's a ton of different guys that it could be. And I'm sure, knowing Mario, that's only the beginning of the list. He does like to flip kids. So there's a possibility for Miami to hit on a number of guys. They could get a couple of guys that are committed elsewhere because of what the offense is doing right now.
So, I mean, at this point, it's very safe to still assume Ohio State is the favorite for JJ. That's where he's been committed. But do you think Miami is the team with the best shot beyond Ohio State? Would they have the best shot at a flip, in your opinion?
I would say, in my opinion, rationally, it should be Miami or it should be Florida State, because he told me it was one of the 3 in-state schools, and I'm not picking on Florida, but I just don't know how many receivers are going to want to play in that offense. Billy's a little more run first. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, he was a longtime Clemson, and then this guy by the name of Nick Saban, who does prefer the run game as well. That's just how he cut his teeth, and he's been successful with it. They're a good running team, and they've got a good quarterback committed, but are they really something you're going to be excited about? I mean, their best receiver this year is Ricky Pearsall. Another thing is Ricky, but it's not even in the stratosphere with what Miami has. So it's going to be harder to impress. Florida State's offense obviously is big play, and so is Miami. It would be easier for me if I was Jeremiah to pick one of those two.
Yeah, and you look at the offensive rankings in state. I mentioned the Hurricanes are 7th in the country in points per game right now. Florida State is 1 spot behind Miami at number 8. Yeah. And Florida, they are currently 78th in points per game at 27.8 points per game. And, they didn't put up, who was it, Charlotte they had the other day. And Jeremiah was actually at that game, and it was all field goals except for 1 touchdown. So that couldn't have been too impressive for JJ.
I did not know that he was at that game. I bet he's like,
he was probably bored.
Look, that's a terrible football game. And this is an epidemic in college football right now. These coaches are probably just going nuts. Kids refuse to take the lesser team serious in practice all week, and it shows on game day. Yeah. It's an epidemic, and Florida just suffered from it this week. So that's the one thing I'll say about Miami. This past weekend, look, they came out and they laid the hammer down right away. Offensively, they did everything. Miami might be the most consistent team in college football right now on offense. Every week they've been pretty dang good.
I like that. All right, when we come back, we got to talk about one of the names that Brian mentioned, talking about wide receiver recruiting, Ny Carr, who decommitted from Georgia. Could Miami be the next spot for the 4-star class of 2024 wide receiver? You'll find out when we come back. We're only getting started. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word that you're hiring. People will see it. Believe me, I have found jobs through LinkedIn Jobs. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And for the everydayers, if you want to take that everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our exclusive SMS texting community through Subtext. I include the link in the show description below. You get SMS text messages directly from my phone to yours. You can ask me one-on-one questions. I give you guys breaking news, recruiting scoops, game updates, practice updates. Try it completely free for 14 days with the link below. And if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. We are joined by our recruiting overlord and my colleague at allhurricanes.com, Brian Smith. So, Brian, I know Miami has really been recruiting Ny Carr pretty relentlessly, as they do with most players that they like. And this is a 4-star wide receiver out of Colquitt County in Georgia. He's a little under 6 feet tall, 170 pounds. He was a long-time, home state Georgia Bulldogs verbal commit. He decommitted from Georgia yesterday. Steve Wiltfong from 24/7 and many others feel like Miami might now be the team to beat. I am also told that Auburn is in the mix, and I think he's going to visit there this coming weekend, and Florida State are in the mix as well. But do you think Miami might have at least a slight edge here for Ny Carr? And tell me about this player.
I saw him actually as a sophomore when he started to blow up. He went up against a team from Atlanta that was state champ, et cetera, and he had 2 touchdowns. I'm like, who's this guy? He's not very big, but he sure runs by everybody. Well, about 35, 40 offers later, I've gotten the hint that he's pretty good. Ny is a burner. I mean, he is a track star. He's one of those kids that could legitimately have the conversation with somebody. Should I hang up the shoulder pads and just put on the spikes? He's that kind of fast. And he's a slot. He is a pure slot. I'm not saying that he's Moss, like the kid that played at Miami back in the day, but
right.
he's in that kind of realm. Now, committed to Georgia early tells you how good he is. Kirby can be rather picky about who he offers. And he's got offers from pretty much everybody down south. Miami has finally kind of gotten to the point now with this offense, like we talked about in segment 1, that it's attracting kids, and that's the deal. Miami had offered him forever ago, but now it's more attractive. This is proof of it. So I've heard Miami is the team, but Auburn's got a visit coming up, and they're pretty hot on the recruiting trail too, although their offense was absolutely horrific. I tried to watch some of the A&M game for Auburn. That was hard to do. And I was even texting with our buddy Zach, who runs the Auburn. That was hard to watch. Their offense is atrocious. So I don't know why he would pick Auburn other than it's pretty close to where he lives. But Miami and Auburn are the 2 teams that are trending.
Okay. I like to hear that. Now, I'd like an update on a player that you and I talked about last week, Brian. So the last time Brian Smith joined us was shortly after 5-star class of 2025 defensive lineman Armando Blunt out of Miami Central verbally committed to Miami. Now, no matter what year he arrives, I am more than happy for Armando Blunt to be a Miami Hurricane. But there's been some chatter ever since, even before he verbally committed, there's been some chatter as to whether Armando Blunt is going to stay in the class of 2025 or if he may try and reclassify to 2024. Is there anything new on that front, Brian, as to what year Armando Blunt may arrive at you at Miami?
There's a lot of heat that he's going to enroll a year early. The exact date or how that works, I don't know. To give a little backdrop, I've met Armando a few times. Very articulate kid, elite academic profile. So, I mean, it's still a pain in the rump to get all the credits taken care of and all that. He'd have to do some online stuff and all that. And most of the time, I just roll my eyes at that because I know there's a lot of garbage that goes on behind the scenes with some of these kids. And above all, like socially, not many 17-year-olds are ready for Miami. That's a really good school. He's an exception to the rule. Academically and socially, he's a very mature kid. Now, do I still like 17-year-olds leaving school early? Not really, but the way college coaches look at it is that's one less year we got to recruit him. They'll never admit it. They don't want him taking visits elsewhere. I don't care what Miami coaches tell me. That's the number one reason they want him to roll early. I don't care. But at the same time, he's also a kid. Even though he's young, he could probably play a little bit. That is the rarest of the rare. Most kids that enroll a year early, they're redshirting.
Yeah.
They're redshirting. And he would probably only be a specialist. It's not like Miami needs a ton of help at defensive end, but he could be in the rotation. And that's where it starts. And he eventually, I think, will grow into a guy that can play some inside. They've even done that a little bit with Ruben, his old friend from Miami Central. I think it's interesting because Miami now is starting to get the kids they were losing forever from South Florida in the front seven. Bassane, Bain, kids like that, they were leaving the area. Now they're starting to get them. You see the defense is changing at the same time. It's not real surprising.
Yeah, and we talked about how, Miami's vertical offense so far is becoming more attractive to wide receiver recruits. How about the job that Miami's defensive line is doing, Brian? And that's an area of the field that I scrutinized it so much heading into the season. Like, I just wasn't sure if they had enough depth. Now, that seems to be all they have is depth because they've been playing these last couple of games without Branson Dean, without Nigel Kelly, without Akeem Mesidor. And it doesn't seem to matter who they plug in. And Leonard Taylor's been playing really well these last couple of games. I give him his props, no question. But, whoever's playing next to and around Leonard Taylor, it doesn't really seem to matter. These guys are all producing. I mean, Ruben Bain has been almost unblockable. They hold the kid on pretty much every play. Thomas Gore had a really good game against Temple. So, if I'm a defensive line recruit, I look at, what Jason Taylor and Big Joe and Lance Guidry are doing there. I'm maybe warming up to this idea about Miami.
It's been very welcomed. Here's stat of the day for me. They're number 3 in the country, 48 yards per game allowed rushing.
Wow.
I don't care what level, what team it is, what division, blah, blah, blah. 48 yards is dope. I mean, they're not getting home because so many teams are not even allowed. They're holding. They don't call holding in college. Right. If they called it like they did at the pro level, Miami would be.
If they and one of the things I've started doing, Brian, is I watch Ruben Bain on almost every snap he takes. I look at number 44. He gets held almost every play, and I think he's only maybe gotten all season maybe 1 or 2 holding calls go in his favor. Like, he gets held more than anybody that I've seen.
He's a freshman. What next year after he's on the cover of a magazine and he's talked about more on podcasts? No, literally, he'll get more respect. That's just human nature, man. Yeah, he's freshman. The interesting part for me is you and I both agreed before this year that the D-line, we were worried about size inside and all that. They're penetrating so much, and the linebackers are so much. That's the most improved unit, I think. On KJ Cloyd, I didn't know who the hell that guy was. I had no idea. He's a good football player. I don't know what Louisville was doing, but that was a catastrophe up there for a lot of reasons. But he's a lot better under Lance Guidry and this entire coaching staff. And that you put him behind a D-line that's getting penetration, he's eating. Maui Go is eating. All of those guys are happy to have these D linemen rotating in and out. And again, like you said, they've been banged up. I do want to see what Miami does when they play North Carolina. They can run the football. They're a little more balanced, and they got a mobile quarterback. Obviously, Drake May is an NFL player. For anybody that didn't know, that will be the litmus test. I have no idea what to expect in that game. I think Miami is better than them, but it's on the road, and Miami's not used to the big atmosphere. They haven't been in these kind of games recently. Let's see what they can do. That D-line will be measured in that game wholeheartedly. That's going to be a lot of fun.
The Miami Hurricanes through 4 games, they lead the ACC in true freshman snaps. And when you can do that while also being 4-0, that's a luxury.
Great stat.
We're going to talk about some of these true freshmen who have been stepping up specifically in the last couple of games. We could talk about Ruben Bain all day, but I want to talk about some of his freshman teammates. Brian Smith is with us here on Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked, and you want to keep it locked to Athletic Brewing Company. It is time, my friends, for our game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Now, when someone gets 2 interceptions in a game, I got to give him the game changer of the week. We had plenty of Canes to choose from who played really well against Temple, but Corey Couch was the Miami Hurricanes game changer of the week against the Temple Owls. And much like Mr. Couch, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the game when it comes to non-alcoholic beer. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, which I love, Goldens, sours, and so much more. They're constantly releasing limited edition experimental types to add to that variety. They are fit for all times and no hangovers ever, my friends. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And make sure every Friday you are checking out Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. I'm part of that show, and it's so much fun. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. every single Friday with Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12, Kenton Gibbs from Locked On ACC, and myself. We take you around all the big stories and big games in college football, and we bring on great people like Brian Smith and others around the Locked On Network to preview the weekend that's coming up. So I know this Friday is going to be a really, really good show coming up. And with Miami having the bye week, I can just kick my feet up and talk about what else is going on in the country. But, Brian, I want to talk about a couple players that you scouted pretty heavily in the class of 2023 who are now starting to get more and more playing time. Ray Joseph. Miami's finding a niche for Ray with those shovel passes and those kind of misdirection plays they run with him. I'm always a big fan of gadget plays, right? And anytime I can get a fast guy like Ray involved, I enjoy it. How could you see his role increasing even as a true freshman throughout this season?
The more the playbook he learns, the more he will play. It's the old axiom that doesn't go away. But like I said in the opening segment, the biggest problem isn't the talent for some of these guys. It's the talent ahead of them already with experience. He's playing behind Xavier. So I wonder, because tight end's banged up anyway, overall, I wonder if Miami might run a little more 4 wide with 2 slots. You can get Ray involved with that. Like a shallow cross, how many safeties or nickels are going to run with Ray? It's not a very high number. I can assure you of that. I had the pleasure of seeing him play probably 10 times throughout his prep career during 7-on-7. Nobody's going to hang with him in short space. He has elite change of direction skill, and he's a future punt returner for the Canes. I will go ahead and mark that down for Mario Cristobal. Mario, you're good. You don't need to hold those tryouts. It's going to be Ray. He is that guy. Just tremendous speed. So I think they're going to find a way to get him the ball in the passing game a little bit more as we go on. But your point about gadget plays for now, with how well Miami runs the football, bake the ball to the running back, quick screen. You don't have to make it complicated. Just let Ray have the ball and be face up with somebody, and good luck to that person with the one-on-one tackle.
Now, in Miami's very deep running back rotation, they've got 2 true freshmen who are getting significant snaps. Obviously, right. Mark Fletcher and he was injured for a couple games. He's back. He's a heavy part of that rotation because Fletch is a grown man, even at 18 years old. Yeah, but now we're starting to see some carries and some work for Chris Johnson. He made his debut in the Bethune-Cookman game. He got a handful of snaps against Temple as well. And Brian, in the limited times we've seen Chris, we've seen some of that track speed on display. Much like Ray Joseph, get this guy the football in space. He's going to make magic happen.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize him. Running backs get banged up a lot. So even if it's just 3 or 4 carries, he can help you in that regard. But he's a completely different kind of running back. My new nickname for him is Helicopter, because I was at one of his practices last year and he had long hair. He's coming around the corner and I'm taking pictures. His hair flew up because of the wind. It looked like a helicopter. He has so much speed, it's ridiculous. He ran 10.2 in the 100 meters. Yeah. I mean, I don't give a crap what level you're at there. That is smoking. He's another one of those kids that could have hung up the pads and just ran track. Miami has to find a way to get him the ball. And you saw him on those runs, like out to the left. Like, guys had the angle. Didn't matter. Like, his speed is ridiculous, and you don't have to be complex with him. And he'll run between the tackles. He did it at Dillard, and he'll do it at Miami. That is a great, great young man and one heck of an athlete. I'm excited to see him in the screen game too. That hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck to the linebacker one-on-one, just like with Ray. That is not a good time. That is not a good time.
I like it. The helicopter, and then next year we're going to have the Hellcat as well when Chris Wheatley
That's
Humphrey
right.
arrives. You have the hellish backfield, the helicopter and the Hellcat.
That's right.
I love it. Great stuff here as always from Brian Smith. Check out his work at allhurricanes.com. He's a colleague of mine there. We're going to keep you guys even entertained throughout the bye week. We're going to have a lot of content coming out this next week. Keep you updated on recruiting, get you ready for that Georgia Tech game next week. We can all just kind of enjoy the weekend coming up with the Hurricanes now ranked number 18 in the country. Check Brian out all over the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time as always.
Thank you very much, sir. I had a great time.
And thank everyone for supporting the show. Other ways to support the show, make sure you sign up for our exclusive subtext community. Click the link in the show description below. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button, and subscribe. And if you want to take us with you wherever you go with the audio version, we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, Google Pods. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.